Hi, and welcome back to my channel. Good effort, Meg. Today we are going to be making some DIY shorts. Since we're getting into the warmer season, I am going to share with y'all my favorite shorts pattern. With this particular pattern, there is a little bit of pattern alteration, so this is a great project to learn how to modify patterns, and the great thing about it is it's completely free, and just like always, I will link all of the information down below so you yourself can get started. I have made this pattern once before, and I am just so happy with the way that they have come out in the past. And so I wanted to share with you guys a inexpensive and great learning base for pants or shorts if you need them in your wardrobe as well. But otherwise, without further ado, let's get started. So as always, we are going to start with our list of materials. So the linen on the left is what I'm using for the main part of the shorts, and I actually didn't use the bicycle fabric, but the tie-dye I use for the lining of the pockets. You are going to need an 18 centimeter or 7-inch zipper, and I would definitely recommend getting a metal one based off of my previous experience. And you're also going to need a button. Now, once you have altered the paper patterns to become shorts from trousers, you're going to go ahead and cut all of your fabric and make all those marking transfers. I didn't show the pattern alteration part just because, again, I've done this pattern before, so I did it a couple years ago. But if that's something you guys would like to see in a separate video, just let me know. I would be more than happy to print it off again and do that process with you guys. But the instructions to the tutorial that I left down below in the description, they're pretty clear, but again, if you guys want to see that, just let me know. Next, you're going to cut out your interfacing pieces. And again, there's different strategies for this, but this is how I like doing it, and then ironing them on separate. And these enormous pockets are next. So the very first step is to finish the edge on our front pocket facing, just like that. You can use a zigzag stitch as well. And then we're going to pin it on our front pocket. So essentially the linen piece is the part you're gonna see on the front of the pockets. And then we're just going to straight stitch the facing piece on, just on that right angle. Then just pin that curve down, and this time we are going to use a zigzag stitch. And you're just going to secure it to the facing, and make sure you do this for both pockets. Next, you're going to take the front of the short piece and that other piece of the pocket, or piece number 3, and they should line up quite well, and you're just going to pin it around that curve. So make sure you have right sides together, because this is the part where we're actually going to secure the pocket to the front. For this particular stitch, we are going to use a 1 centimeter seam allowance, and we're back to just a regular straight stitch, and we're just going to stitch around that curve, and that curve only. Now this step is particularly underrated. I didn't do this the first time I made my shorts, so learn from my lessons and definitely do this. So trim those seams and clip them around the curve. And now what we're going to do is we are going to top stitch, and essentially what we're doing is we're capturing that remnant part of the seam that we just clipped onto the pocket piece. So we are straight stitching as close as we can to capture that stitch. And you can see here the stitches are on my tie-dye piece, which will be the inside of my pockets. You can see the clean line that will make. Now that we gave that pocket seam a good press and we have nice crisp seams, we are now going to attach the other part of the pocket and start making the pocket bag. So go ahead and pin that all the way around. And for this stitch, we are only stitching on the tie-dye pieces. So we are not capturing that linen. So this is to actually make the pocket bag. And once you are done with this seam, it would be a good time to go ahead and run it through a serger and finish those edges. And for this, I also forgot to mention, make sure you're doing that right sides together. So here you can see I just serged my seams. You can also use a zigzag. And now we're going to attach the pocket to the pants. So what we're doing is we're pinning those pieces all the way around, and we are essentially just going to stitch down the side and then at a right angle there. For that right angle stitch, you can just stop with your needle down in the fabric, lift up your presser foot and pivot. Just kind of an easy trick to learn how to stitch in right angles. Now this part, you're only doing on one of the front panels. So you can see here the pocket is left facing me, and we are essentially going to trace this template on the top using chalk. You can use a basting stitch. I just used my little fabric marker. But again, you're only doing this on one of the front facing pieces. So here again, notice the pocket is on the left. Now we're going to prepare what's called our fly shield, and I annotated the number as listed in the pattern just to help you keep organized. But essentially we're going to sandwich those right sides together, and we're going to straight stitch along the J. And essentially we will flip this right side out after we trim and clip those curves, and that is making what's called our fly shield. And here's where the magic really happens. Huzzah! And now give it a good press, and there you have it, a fly shield. Now we have returned to the front of the pants. So we're going to put them right sides together, and now we are going to measure from the bottom of the J. We are going to measure 6 centimeters along the curve. It's going to kind of be a little bit weird, but you are going to mark that with a dash, with chalk, a pen, or whatever your preference. And let's put a pin right where that point is. That is a dot that should have been transferred over when you were cutting your fabric, and pin these securely. Then using a 1.2 centimeter seam allowance, we are going to stitch from that notch that we just made to that dot. And you can see here just how I always check my seam allowance before I start sewing. And there you go. Now we're going to attach the fly piece. So this is not the fly shield that we made earlier, which was piece 6. This is piece 5. And make sure you finish that edge before you pin it on here for the J side. But yeah, go ahead and pin it on, and then we will stitch it from the top, and we will stop at the dot. And don't forget, here we are still using a 1.2 centimeter seam allowance. And as with our previous seams, we will trim this down just a bit, and then we're going to get to probably the most difficult part of making pants, but I promise you got this, and that is attaching the zipper. Yay! So putting the zipper on where you need it is probably the trickiest part of attaching the zipper. So with our right side up and the zipper facing down, you're essentially going to line up the left side of the zipper right along the seam that we just made. Then you're going to measure 2 centimeters from the bottom of piece 5 up, and that's where you're going to put the base of the zipper. And when I say that, I mean the metal part of the zipper, not the zipper tape. So once you have that all lined up, go ahead and pin that on so it won't wiggle around. And before we stitch anything, I have found that turning that piece of the tape up just helps with bulkiness. So that's optional, I suppose. I suppose you could just clip it off, but I prefer to fold it up. Now, next I would recommend basting your zipper in place. And essentially all that means is you're just taking a piece of scrap thread, something of contrasting color preferably, and essentially just stitching it in place so it doesn't wiggle around. And using a zipper foot, you're going to stitch along the right side of the zipper. And if you need to go back and do the top with the zipper open, be sure to do that. Next, we're going to add a second row of stitches. This one's going to be a little bit farther from the zipper teeth. So now you have your front part of your shorts facing you, and all I've done here is I've just flipped that piece 5 with the sewn zipper behind our essentially seam there, and we are going to pin the piece 5 to the front of the shorts all the way down, and we will stitch along that blue line that I drew, or whatever color you did yours in. And we'll just use a straight stitch and just follow the line as best you can. And take your time here at the end and really slow down. Now this was a step that I skipped the first time I made my shorts, but I just folded over that finished edge and basted it down in place. On my first pair of shorts, that seam came undone. But yeah, so I found that this helped a lot in making this a cleaner seam. But yeah, once you have basted that, then you're gonna go ahead and pin it to the other side of the zipper. And then you guessed it, we're going to baste it in place again. I found this easier with the zipper open, but whatever works for you. And now we are going to attach our fly shield. So that is piece 6. And we are looking at the wrong side of the inside of the shorts. And we'll just pin it in place. And again, we're gonna baste it in place. This seems like a lot of basting, but I promise it's worth it for the outcome of the shorts. I did not do this the first time I made these shorts. I felt like it was a waste of time, but I promise you these came out way better than the first pair I made. So learn from my mistakes. Now with everything basted in place and that zipper open, using that zipper foot again, we are gonna stitch that zipper on. This can be a little tricky, getting that zipper out of the way, but just work it, you'll get it. Might take a few minutes, but yeah. And once this is done, you can actually remove all of those basting stitches that we did, which is why it's great to use a contrasting color. Now with the wrong side of the shorts facing you, we're just gonna add a short stitch there at the bottom of that fly shield. And what this fly shield is for is it really just prevents the zipper from touching your skin when you're wearing your shorts, so it's a little bit more comfortable. Now on to another new skill that we're going to learn today, and that is putting in our darts. So what I like to do is fold this triangle to its midpoint and then press it with an iron to create a nice crisp center line, and then add pins along the folded edge so that way nothing shifts around as I'm stitching. And when we stitch, it'll just be a straight line along that line all the way to the point of the triangle. I also like to reverse and forward stitch on the point a couple times to definitely reinforce it. And don't forget to press your dart towards the back of the pant leg. And if you're confused what would be the back of the pant leg, press it towards the J. Now things are about to get wild. So we're gonna take our back pieces and pin it to the front piece at the side seam. And there should be some markings to line up. Always start at your marks first, and then we will straight stitch both of those side seams. So now we are going to make our leg holes. So we're going to take those two short pieces, so one from our back piece and one from our front piece of the corresponding right and left, and we're going to pin those together, and it'll be a little clearer when I do the second one. So you can see here, you just bring that back leg piece and the front leg piece together, line them up, and then pin it together. Then we will go ahead and stitch those pieces, and then we'll start closing up the pants. Now, if this is your first time making pants, this part can be a little confusing, but you're gonna take one leg, you're gonna turn it right side out, and you're gonna tuck it inside of the other leg, which is still wrong side out. And we are going to line up and make this kind of U, and that's essentially what we're stitching. So we're gonna start at those leg seams, so those short stitches that we just did, and then work up this U shape until we get to the waist. Then once we get everything nice and pinned, we will stitch from the top of the waist all the way down past that seam until we get to that mark that should still be visible on kind of the front part of the pant leg. And now on to assembling our waistband. So there's three pieces that we're gonna make two of. And those pieces are 7, 8, and 9, 9 being the biggest piece. So we're just gonna turn those right sides up, and we're going to lay piece 7 first on the corresponding, just follow the curve, and essentially you're just gonna lay these on top of one another, and piece 8 will go on top, and 7 and 8 are facing down, and we will pin the short ends of the waistband and stitch that accordingly at those short seams. After you have stitched the short sides together, you're going to want to press both of them with those seams open, and on one of the pieces you're going to press down along the top of the curve about 1/4 inch or so, and that will be folded over in the end. So you'll see what the purpose of that is later. So now we're going to attach the first part of the waistband. So starting with the piece that does not have that 1/4 inch folded over, and with the zipper open, with the waistband in a smiley face configuration, starting at that center back seam and that mark that we have, just start pinning it all the way around. And you will want to match up your side seams as well before you get too far into it, and really take your time here. Try to make it a clean seam with very little like ripples in the fabric and such. This will give it a really clean look, so you might have to use a ton of pins to get it to lay right, but just do that until you get to the zippers, where you'll notice a little bit of fabric overhang, and that is intentional, so don't think that you need to clip that off. But once you do that, you're gonna go ahead and stitch that part of the waistband all the way around the top. Now that we have that first part of the waistband pressed and facing up, see how nice and clean that looks, we're going to attach the second part of the waistband. So this is the one that had that 1/4 inch piece that was pressed, and again in a smiley face configuration and with right sides facing. Don't forget to clip your zippers if you haven't done that yet, like I forgot to. Yeah, just like what we did before, is we are just going to pin that waistband all the way around, making sure to match up those side seams, the back center seam, and the end seams. And we will just stitch that all the way around. Now we are going to understitch, which is to capture that seam that we just made. Notice I'm not starting at the very end here. I'm starting about 2 to 3 centimeters from the edge, or about 1 inch. And we are essentially doing the opposite of what a top stitch is, because you won't see this on the outside of your shorts, but we are just catching that little bit of fabric that is underneath, and you won't see this. After we finish with that, we're going to trim that seam down. This cuts down on the bulk. Now with those 2 waistband pieces, we're going to fold them, the ends of them, where they're right sides together, and we're going to pin it and stitch. You're not going to go through where the rest of the shorts is, so you're trying to only stitch on these 2 waistband pieces. And essentially this is going to make like a little pocket that when we flip the waistband right side out, it kind of captures everything. Gives it a nice clean look. Now we are just going to trim the seam down, kind of in a triangle, but do not cut through that seam you just made. And now this is where the magic happens. So we are going to flip that waistband so it's right side out. And I like to do this and then give it a good press before I stitch anything. Just helps keep the fabric in place as you're stitching. So here's it after I gave it a good press, and you can see how clean that's gonna look. I'm so excited. And next we are going to do a method called stitch in the ditch method. So I'm just gonna apply a straight stitch literally right where that seam is, and that is gonna hold the waistband closed. I would say this is probably like my 4th time doing it. The first couple times I did this, I kept missing that piece, so be patient with yourself. Try again. You got this. And now we are going to hem the leg holes, so you can just fold it up and press it to your desired hem length, and then just straight stitch all the way around. This one's really up to you, how high you want your legs to go. And the last couple steps is adding our buttonhole, and then we will add our button. And you can do these with whatever method you prefer. If you prefer hand stitching, definitely do that, but that's about it. So I'm really happy with the way that the shorts came out. I think they came out better than the first time I made them, for sure. So I hope that this tutorial was clear, and I hope that it was informative enough to get you through the finish line. And I hope you guys make some for yourself. Again, this is a pretty beginner-friendly pattern, I would say, and it kind of dips your toe into pattern modifications and alterations, which is a great skill to have in your toolbox if you're starting to get into the world of sewing or crafts. But yeah, so I hope you guys enjoy this kind of content, and if you do, don't forget to stick around, and I will be making more content like this and more in the coming weeks, so be looking forward to that. But you guys have a wonderful day or evening wherever you are, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye!